So, ladies and gentlemen, Peter is about to come on in just a minute here. Make sure you stay tuned all the way through this epic interview because this guy is absolutely blowing up and making some big waves in Canada, in the world, and inspiring you and empowering you to be an amazing leader. So, before that, I do want to talk to you about the sponsored message. If you are an influencer, entrepreneur, someone who wants to make a huge impact in the world, you are like my best friend. I love surrounding myself with people like you and communicating with you, coaching you, helping you get what you want, connecting you with the resources and the network that I have. And I love interviewing you on becoming your greatest possible self. So if you want to get your message out, come talk to me. Would love to hear about you coming on our platform or even starting your own platform, your own podcast. It's a blast. Chris at beyourgps.com. Message me or DM me. Looking forward to talking to you about your purpose and your message in the world. Next up, I'm going to share about the iTunes review of the week. This week, it's by Tiffany Luva Carter. And Tiffany says, this guy is on fire. Every Wednesday, I tune in to watch and listen to Chris Burns live. He has the best guest, and his energy is contagious. This is so helpful for me midweek when I start feeling overwhelmed. As a podcaster myself, he is one of the few people I regularly listen to. Go listen and subscribe now. I love this guy. Thanks so much, Tiffany. If you want to give us a review, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self in the iTunes store, and you can give us a review there. Let us know what you love, what you want to see more of in the future, how we can improve the show and make it even better for you, and that really helps us to keep growing as well. Subscribe, rate, review, share it with your friends. That's really the biggest thing, is if you value this message, share it with people you care about, and especially the people you don't like, share it with them because they probably could use some growth in their life too, right? So we're going to have a lot of fun. Again, Peter is going to be coming on here in just a minute. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes because this guy is a freaking fireball just like me and going deep into being a leader, being a conscious, loving person. He's just an amazing guy. He's done some graphic work for us and just he's a badass. Peter is a badass. So I'm going to intro him, and then we'll bring him on the screen. Make sure you stay tuned all the way through to the end. So Mr. Peter Rychlik in the past was a personal trainer. He had a burgeoning personal training practice, the woman of his dreams, a great house, and was surrounded by a community that loved him. However, it was not to be, and in one fell swoop, he had lost his business. All of his clients left him, and he lost his partner and his home at the same time. However, he's taken it upon himself to dive deeper than ever before into learning about himself. He embarked on a spiritual journey of transformation across the world, and it's allowed him to investigate his character and discover who he really is. This crisis of faith was seen as an opportunity for even more faith and has deepened his relationship with himself and allowed him to uncover and tap into his innate gifts and best parts about him. Peter, you ready to rock this, man?
Hell yeah!
I love it, man. I love the energy. I'm telling you, you're a fireball, just like me, man.
Me.
Dude, we're going to have a blast.
It's warm here.
Yes, heating up. So thank you for being here, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with our audience what you've been growing through, your message about leadership and your journey. It's been really, really powerful. Before that, though, let's dive into the question of the day. Today, it's about how to get paid with your story. What have you learned? What have you experienced? What have you noticed in terms of how to get paid for your story? What have you seen? What does that mean for you, Peter?
What does that mean for me? That's a really great question, Chris. So what that has meant for me is simply being a little bit courageous and putting yourself out there and being a little bit vulnerable in a public forum. And then people connect with that. So I'll use the example from when I used to be a personal trainer. The big thing that inspired me to be a personal fitness trainer was at one point in my life, I was over 100 pounds overweight, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I felt invisible to people. I felt like, walking across the parking lot was difficult. And I was in my 20s. I was like, this shouldn't be this hard. And it was pretty rough. And so I decided to learn how to train myself, learn how to eat, learn about exercise and nutrition, and dive deep. And then, flash forward 4.5 years later, I had become a personal fitness trainer, and I was helping other people on that journey. And it wasn't until I started sharing my own story of going through those motions and those trials and sharing about hey, at one point I used to be 100 pounds. At one point, I felt invisible. At one point, I couldn't find any partners. I couldn't find any friends or anything like that. I had very little self-esteem. This is what helped me, going to the gym and finding someone back then who believed in me was what really helped me transform. And, that was in the form of my personal trainer, back then named Miles. Miles Johnson is a heck of a man, and I owe him a lot and a huge debt of gratitude. But, it's finding that kind of champion and finding that within yourself to go do that. And then I would just put that message out there. And I was surprised at the people that resonated with it and the people that really ringed with it. And then they would reach out to me. They'd be like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you help me? And it was as simple as that. And we'd have a simple conversation. We'd connect and find out about their goals, where we'd relate. And then they were on their way, and they were one of my students, just like that.
Dude, that's so powerful, man. I love how you used your own journey and those challenges, those trials, those tribulations to share that with other people, number one, so that you could relate to them and connect with them. And two, you surrounded yourself with people who believed in you, so you could leverage that belief. Their vision of you was greater than you could see at the time, and they inspired you. They instilled that faith back into you. Remember in your intro, you're talking about faith, how that's really been a part of your journey, coming from this crisis, and also to develop it into like who you are, what you stand for, why you're here, and having faith in that whole process. So it's really powerful, man. I know we're going to give this audience a ton of juice and great info. And if you're just now tuning in, take a screenshot of this. If you're listening to the podcast or watching on Facebook Live, however you're receiving this, take a screenshot, tag Peter, tag me, and absolutely put it out there. It's at Futureproof Designs. That's Peter's handle. So tag him, doing some amazing stuff. So Peter, let's dive into more about who you are, what you stand for, what your clients come to you for today.
So who I am, I see myself as a leader of leaders and somebody who's just got a very deep concern and love for humanity. So, and most importantly, I see myself as a bridge. So it doesn't matter, what it is I'm doing, whether it's personal fitness training, whether it's web design, whether it's anything else. I have this innate ability to really dive deep into any field, really figure out its nuts and bolts and how you can apply it universally to anybody. And then so I'm a bridge to take people from a place of ignorance into a place of understanding.
Love it.
And I for many, many people. So.
Dude, that's awesome. I love it. So as far as like the understanding and people understanding themselves, why do you stand for that? Tell us a little bit more about what that drive comes from today, to stand for people, to get clarity, to get the awareness, to become conscious of who they are and what they're here for, so to speak.
I just believe it's deeply important, because while I was on my spiritual journey, while I was traveling, while I was out there, I had met a couple that had left their professions in England, and they had moved to South America, and they were just doing their thing. They were exploring themselves. They were, ardent Vipassana meditators, and really just kind of tapping into that like real-time flow that is always available to us, but we may not always be connected to it because we may not be really truly connected with our hearts and our purpose. And they said to me something that kind of like really rang true in a really deep way. And they said, the thing about life is there's no dress rehearsal. This is it. And it wasn't until that point that I was really truly living that way. Like I feel like I'm going to share a little bit of like a little bit of legend or a little bit of cultural myth. Like in Mexico, they feel like there's something called the three deaths. And the first death happens when we're still alive. But it's when we first realize that one day, everything about us and everything we love is going to disappear. Like we're going to pass away. And that's death number one. And death number two is when we're actually dead and buried and put in the ground. And death number three is the last time anybody says your name. And that was a big one for me. And when coupled with that and with what that couple had said to me, that's when I felt like I had my first death, and I realized, oh man, I really need to start thinking about how I'm living my life and what it is I want to leave behind. And I can't just, borrow my time here, spend it here, trade it for money there, and then just, be adrift in this life. Like I need to leave an impact behind that I feel is meaningful, that I can step up into. And that's when I started really thinking about that and started really taking charge and responsibility of my desires and learning more about that. And that's why I feel like having that journey of yourself, that like time where we kind of go away and have a little bit of quiet time and really understand where our hearts are and what they're yearning for is so critically important, because we'll never get this again. And maybe reincarnation's a real thing and the Buddhists were right, but this one time in history, this one time that you get to be Chris Burns or Peter Rychlik or whoever you are right now, that's it. You're never going to be here again.
Damn. Dude.
And that's what I cherish.
That's powerful. So I hear you really got connected with the impermanence of life and how quickly everything, how quickly life is gone in an instant, and then like, what are we leaving behind? What is the legacy? What is the impact that we're leaving behind? Which is, you and I, we totally vibe on that. And a lot of the guests who come on as well, that's like a conversation that we have. And not everyone is willing or is having that conversation as often as they should and diving into that. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it can be painful. And I think that you have a journey of why you dive into that conversation. A lot of, stuff that you had to go through to say, something's not quite right. I'm not hitting the mark. I don't feel like I'm fulfilled. I don't feel like I'm on the right path. I don't feel happy and joyous and loving life. So take us back to, you're having this successful gym and a training business, I should say, and you were impacting a lot of people. Like, what happened? How did you get to success? And then what happened from there, man?
How did I get to success? It kind of honestly almost all happened at once. Yeah. It was almost as soon as I decided to become a personal trainer, it was as if some sort of higher power of the universe was like, really? Okay, we've been waiting for this, And as soon as I signed up for the certification process, within a month later, I had 7 clients under my belt, and I wasn't even certified yet. I was like, where did you people come from? Wow. You know what I mean? It was wonderful. It was amazing. It was something that I had never experienced in my life up until that point. Everything else kind of just felt like a drag or like a really long trudge up to the top. But here it was just like an elevator express, like shot me right to the top. Dang. And so I had a full client list. I was active with that. I was in the middle of my studies. I wasn't worried about, training people while I was uncertified, because this is something I've been doing for myself for like 4.5 years, investigating just about every day of my life for that 4.5 years. So the certification process was more a formality. Thank you. And it's something that I just kind of kept going with. And after a few months, I had opened up, my online fitness brand at the time. It was called Elevated Body Fitness. And I started putting my message out there on Facebook, started putting my own success stories and the success of my clients. More and more people kept reaching out to me, and they were like, hey, can you do this for me? Hey, can you help me out? Absolutely. Started growing an online funnel. And then around the end of the summer of 2017, around August or so, I actually forgot I had completely forgot I applied here, but I applied to Ellick and pulled me up months later, and they were like, hey, do you want to come down for an interview? And at the time I was like, well, I'm kind of doing my own thing, but yeah, maybe why not? Like, let's see what this is all about. Like, maybe I can have a better facility that I can train out of. Like, let's do it. Yeah. And I show up, I'm doing the interview, and then midway through the interview, the guy literally takes the binder for the job description of what I'd be doing as a trainer. And he's like, you know what, who you are, this is actually not for you. And he tosses it out, and he picks up a binder with a management position for the gym. And he's like, actually, I think you'd be better suited to do this. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah, for real. So it was every door open for me when I went for personal training. It was every step I took, it was like I had the golden touch all of a sudden. And yeah, and so I took on that. And I was still having, my online clients. They moved my personal client, Live One, to LA Fitness. I was running around managing a gym and managing a bunch of personal trainers, scheduling them all. I was also working with the sales team as well too. I was a busy lad, a little bit too busy. And that's when it actually started to kind of crumble a little bit, but we could touch on that later. But that's pretty much it. I just started following my bliss, and every door just kept opening, and I just kept saying yes.
Wow, that's incredible, man. So it's like you just showed up. You just showed up and you're serving people and helping them with what you had overcome, and you've been learning and loving this information about fitness. I think you said it for like 4 years, like you'd been really studying and growing yourself so that you could have the wisdom, the expertise, and the knowledge to serve and make a difference. And with that experience, he said, I'm going to go for it. And just following that momentum, that energy is really what had you have that success. So beyond that, man, when did it start like crumbling? When did you see that the busyness and doingness started to not be in alignment anymore?
So it started to not be in alignment anymore when I remember coming home from work and my roommate was like, hey man, like you haven't cleaned or vacuumed or done anything in the house in like 3 weeks. And she was really upset. And because that's something I've always been on top of. And that's like one of the biggest agreements we have is that we always had like an even distribution of the duties around the house. And we never had up until then. And then I realized I was like, I haven't cleaned in 3 weeks. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to slow down a little bit and try to find the time for this. And, my partner at the time was like, hey, I barely see you anymore. Like I just see you in the evenings, maybe for a couple of hours, like what's going on? I hadn't been to a community event in a long time. My friends kept reaching out. I kind of just sort of, I don't know, brushed them off and brushed the text off. Then I started to realize my relationships are falling apart. Right? And that's when I realized I started becoming out of alignment because I was so focused on my mission, so focused on what I was doing with my work that I just tunnel visioned on that and let everything start to fall apart around me. But I had to realize that, especially with the kind of work that I was doing, like it is about my relationships. Those need to stay there.
Yep.
If I'm not cultivating those and maintaining those, that momentum that I've built up, that's going to run out of gas. And all that steam's going to evaporate.
So what's the difference between like really being all in on your purpose and your mission and this work and your career and continuing to build the relationships to grow your business? Because I think that there's a distinction that you're making here because, if I said, hey, I'm going all in on my business, then that might look perhaps like I'm always networking, always on phone calls, always attempting to get more clients and fill my coaching practice. But it sounds like that was a little bit different for you, that you stopped doing the things that got you to the point of success.
Yeah. And so that's a really great question because you hear that all the time. Like if you go on YouTube and you search like business motivation stuff, you're going to hear speak. I wake up at like 7 a.m. and I don't go to bed until like 2 a.m. and I'm all in. And like, if you're not focused, if you're not hungry enough, and you know what, man, like that's life is a multidimensional thing. Like it doesn't work like that. I think at some points in our lives, we have to do that, but I don't feel that is going to be the make it or break it difference to your success. And why those relationships are important and why you shouldn't sacrifice them is because you have to take everything from a really balanced and multi-dimensional approach and understand what got you there in the first place. And it's those relationships that got you there in the first place. And so you need to make, relationships and like your health and your own spirituality part of your mission. And in that way, you're always on your mission. It's not just about what you're doing for your dollars. It's the whole thing, how you're living your life, your whole life directed towards your mission. Then great, then you can go all in on it. And that means, taking that time out to be out there in community events and contributing and being a pillar of community and doing other things.
Yeah. And did you attempt to course correct? And what didn't work about course correcting and reinvesting back in the relationships? Because it like kind of all fell apart for you before you started going on your more spiritual journey to discover more about who you are as a leader, as a person, authentically.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch on two perspectives, from the perspective I had back then and the perspective I have now.
Okay.
They're totally different answers. The perspective that I had back then, I definitely attempted to course correct.
Yeah.
The perspective I have now, I definitely did not attempt to course correct.
I love it.
Yeah. And so back then I assumed I was course correcting by cutting down my hours at the gym, by, at one point I actually just gave up my management position. I was like, you know what, I can't handle this. I can't handle the extra time and pressure. I'm just going to go back to training. I'm just doing this. And then, at one point I just quit. I just quit from LA Fitness. I was like, you know what, I can't handle this at all. I'm burnt out. I can't be here for my people. I'm going through the mechanical motions of it and they're not getting anything out of it. So I'm going to focus on my online thing. And just take the daytime to kind of reset and rebuild my foundation. But by that point, the damage was already done. I had months to course correct. I was on the wrong track the whole time. I just didn't see it. And it didn't matter. So it felt like at the time that it all fell apart all of a sudden. And it may have sure looked that way. And it definitely had a really definite kind of ending for sure. But that was a long time coming, Yeah.
So from that point, you really set out on discovering yourself, because you like hit a rock bottom. You lost your house, you lost your woman, you lost your job, or like that those things fell away. They like didn't fit where you were at emotionally, physically, spiritually anymore. So what was that journey like to start discovering yourself and who you are?
So for the first couple months, it was just kind of like living in isolation and honestly just dealing with the grief and just being mostly bereaved and figuring it out and just kind of like letting it hit me for a bit because it was too much to even look at the time. And it wasn't about until like February or so. So this happened in November 2017 or culminated rather. And it's around February of 2018 is when I started to kind of like look at the pieces a little bit, peel myself off the floor and kind of start to figure out what happened. And so I just reached out to a few friends who I'd been connecting with after. I was like, hey, do you know of any ways that I could kind of help, gain some introspection, gain a little bit of perspective and awareness? And they were like, wow, yes, we do. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so the idea to go on a trip and go to Peru to experience plant medicine was something that came up, along with a few other practices as well, like cultivating more mindfulness. And just, I engaged with a teacher of mine in Edmonton, just for, the protection of his identity. Let's call him Carl. Okay. And so Carl would host these workshops at his house that he called kind of like a healing portal or anything. And so what that was all about was just all kinds of different ways to cultivate awareness. So one of my favorites was something called Trickster Kindergarten that he ran. And it was just kind of like getting in touch with that inner fool and inner clown and letting your like lover and like playfulness like come out and think where, you hold back in that, authentic expression and where, you give and how you kind of essentially blossom. And that was really powerful for me. And he had a bunch of other authentic kind of relating games that way that allowed me to see, where I blossom, where I hold back, and how to connect with others and build some intimacy that way. And so that was that start of that train. And it was also due to Carl's work as well too that he suggested the trip to Peru, and he had suggested the plant medicine as well and engaging with that. Yeah. And when I made my decision to do that, it was like another floodgate had opened. The universe was like, all right, fantastic. As at the time in February, I still hadn't had a job. I barely had any income. And I was like, how am I going to fly to Peru and do all this? Like, where am I going to get the money for that crap? And and sure enough, I had some connections through the online space that kind of put it out there that they needed a community manager for cryptocurrency. I put my name there, and so many people that you and I both know had stepped up and vouched for me that way. They just simply tagged the person who posted. They're like, this guy, you should really consider this guy, and sure enough, it worked, and I got hired with that. I found a great day job as well too, and as I was doing that as well, I had reached out to a couple of people as I was doing at the time. I was experimenting with Facebook ads and just kind of learning my way around that, and then found a couple of my first clients that way. So all of a sudden, I was in that like incredibly busy space again, but I had a mission. I had a goal. It was all going to end on May 15th. So that was the day I was going to fly away. And I was like, all right, I can focus like this for a few months and find my way there. And you know what? It worked. It worked enough to, afford all the new equipment I needed to go travel. It afford the flights, afford like the ceremony costs, it afford, any of my stays, and just have me, move through South America as well too. So it was brilliant. It was worth it. Wow. And it really opened up.
Congrats, man. I want to dive into that as well. What you learned about yourself with the plant medicine, with the journey and travels and adventures. Before that, though, I know you were talking about authenticity, and you went into these healing portals and you were exploring and discovering that. Is there any practices that you'd recommend for people that they can tap into their authenticity and their true self even more? I know we talked about mindfulness and kind of just being with yourself in the present moment, but you also mentioned some other kind of funny, clownish, like just being self-expressed things. Is there anything you could recommend our audience do around that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Chris. In a really simple way, what they can do is everyone has those kind of like what I call wallflower moments where you want to go do something, you want to express yourself, but then you get a little hung up and you go back in your head and you don't do the thing. And then you're thinking, oh, I really want to do it. But it gets like even harder to push up against. And then you just end up kind of sitting back, being your wallflower self at that time. And that's okay. But when those moments come up, cultivating that mindfulness by like really getting in touch with your breath again. And so like breathing into the nose and like really paying attention to the sensations like right under your lip and just see what that feels like. They pay attention to like, like the heat, the touch, the air moving, the, cold, anything that's passing by. If there's like, maybe you've got some blockages in your sinuses, like pay attention to that, what that feels like. And then on the way out, and then that'll help you drop back into your body as well too. And then you'll feel where that like, hesitation is coming from, and then just start moving with that. Like, if you start to feel something in your chest, like maybe start like moving your elbows and your shoulders and just start going with it. And maybe you'll start dancing, maybe you'll express, maybe you'll just loosen up a bit, and then you can walk up to that person you want to talk to, or, go up on stage and do the microphone thing, or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish that your head is holding you back from. Because you know what, man, it's that journey from that 18 inches from here down to here that can feel like a million miles.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, dude, that's great. So for everyone listening or watching, like just really take the time to be present with yourself in the moment and notice what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. When you pay attention to that stuff, it gets you present in the moment. And I love how you said, start to shake out or wiggle out any kind of stiffness or tension or resistance in whatever area that's in. Maybe it's in your neck, maybe it's in your shoulders, your stomach, your legs, arms, wherever, but just start to like move around a little bit. And, I stretch a lot, and I think a lot of people are really resistant to like stretching and like being limber and mobile. And it's like, hey, like your body was designed to move. And if you're concerned about what other people think and you're not willing to give yourself that boost of energy, that boost of mobility, that access and tapping in, tuning into your body because you care so much about what they think, then your priorities are all wrong. Like listen to your body. Like dogs, I love it. My girlfriend's dog shakes so much, like just shakes her body and like throws off any kind of like emotion, or if she was laying down or anything like that, just like shakes to free herself so that she can be back present in the moment as her greatest possible dog self. It's like it's so cool what nature is modeling for us that we can just look to really step into our power. And by the way, if this was a valuable golden nugget for you, again, go take a screenshot, tag Peter at Futureproof Designs, let him know how much you're loving what he's sharing, because this is super powerful. And we're going to be diving into this aspect of the adventuring, the plant medicine, man. What did you discover about yourself through that process?
What did I discover about myself through that process? Well, you know what? I discovered quite a bit, and it was the most beautiful, most difficult thing I think I've ever put myself through, to be honest. It was quite that rite of passage, like from in older societies or other cultures, many of them have a passage for their boys at one point when they reach a certain age. and that they have these trials that they go through. And then if they succeed through those trials, they are proclaimed to be men. And that was what that whole journey was for me. And so the biggest thing that I learned about myself was, you know, what my life could look like if I had just listened to the lessons that she was trying to tell me. And one of the biggest lessons she was trying to tell me was learn how to give yourself some more time. Because I think, especially with the way our modern world is, you know, you can click here, click there, touch this button there, and you have instant gratification of anything. You have the world at your fingertips, and you have 10,000 people telling you how they made 10K in the first week of their business or something like that. And what they're not showing you with that is the years often of work and research and trial and error that it took to figure out a system would go from 0 to 10K in, 168 hours.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get conned by that. I certainly did. You know, I always wanted everything like right now and moving right towards it as fast as I possibly could.
Totally.
And that's what caused me to fall apart. And, you know, giving up on stuff before I was really ready to see it through, you know, like I think that's that real sense of resilience. Like every field, every job, everything you're going to want to do, every interest you have in life, you're going to become disinterested in it. It's going to drop a little. It's going to suck. It's going to drag. But what it goes down, going to come right back up.
Yeah.
And so you need to understand that you got to just keep going through that. And those opportunities when it drops down is opportunities for you to get a little deeper with yourself and connect deeper with why it is you're doing what you're doing in the first place.
Dude.
And then forward with that. And that's something that I really needed to understand on real, that I was kind of missing the point on going up until that point. And it took a 4,000-year-old plant to tell me that, but that's how I had to learn it. So that was one of those.
Oh my gosh. So for someone else who's out there right now listening and they feel like they're getting caught up with the numbers, with the expectations, comparing themselves to others, not having the grace and the compassion and the patience for themselves, how can they do something different? How can they make a different choice? I know you mentioned connecting back to their why. Can we dive in deeper to that, or what else would you recommend?
Yeah, connecting back to their why is important. And then also understanding that the time is going to pass anyway. Like, time is probably one of the only consistencies that we have in this life.
Yeah.
Every minute is 60 seconds. You know, those years are going to fly by anyway. So why are you running so fast? What are you worried about? Like, who cares if you get to your goal a year from now or 3 years from now? Those 3 years from now are going to pass anyway. But do it right. Do it in a way that really builds a solid foundation for yourself. And that way you don't end up going backwards. You don't end up losing what you've learned. And that's deeply, deeply important for people to understand. And so that's like the one thing that I love and hate about Facebook is social media in general. Yeah. I don't mean to call Facebook out on that, but truly, like, we can get into comparison syndrome, like on steroids, like it can get really difficult, especially when you see people that, like at one point, like they weren't really doing a whole lot. Maybe they were in their early stages and they're crushing it. And you're still kind of in this early stage and you're like, well, when am I going to be crushing it? Maybe if I bought his course, I'll know what to do. Well, no, that's how you just, go bankrupt, like, honestly. So, slow down and take stock of what you're doing. If you feel like maybe you're doing something ineffective or wrong, feel free to change it. But every time you change something, it's going to take a little more time, and you have to learn how to give yourself that time and just be okay with that. And on the upside of like social media, it can be really inspiring to see people move forward like that. Yeah. It can, maybe give you the fire you need to kick your butt into action. This is why I believe in part that you do this show, is to show people, hey, look at these people here doing these things, sharing their experiences. Like, you can have these for yourself.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I hear there, like, build the foundation the right way. Understand that, like, it takes whole life balance. Build those character skills in yourself: integrity, authenticity, putting in your boundaries, knowing your core values, knowing who you are, what you stand for, that's all a process. And don't be hard on yourself if you're not at, level 10, so to speak, or level 100 with those things, with those aspects and attributes. Have that patience and time with yourself. And I think that's important. And you lived that journey, and you experienced the pain of feeling like you're comparing yourself to everyone. I know I've experienced that pain. I felt like I was supposed to be farther along than I was, and it really got me down. It frustrated me, and it I let it break my spirits and kind of just go into hiding and numbing and avoiding and just not facing my challenges and my demons and the things that I was afraid of head on. So I think that's really important, man. How did you have the courage to face those difficult times and the things that you were afraid of, when things were falling apart? How did you confront that and overcome it?
You know what? Initially, I didn't have the courage. Initially, I just retreated. I moved in with a roommate who I didn't know at the time. Just kind of isolated myself, and honestly just kind of sat on the couch and felt sorry for myself for a couple of months. And I really didn't have the courage to look inside of myself that at some point I would have to accept the reality that I was responsible for this. I did this to myself, and I wasn't ready for that. But at some point I knew that this was so painful that I never wanted to repeat it again. And so I had to face that truth, that there is a possibility that actually it was me. It wasn't my clients, it wasn't, my relationships or anything it was me. I was the, custodian and attendant to all those relationships and all those things that I had, and my desires as well too. And I was letting them down. Find out why I was letting them down, because I deeply care about them. And I really wanted to be with them, and I wanted them to all be flowing in a really great place, yet I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to hold my own power. And that was lesson number 2 that the plant medicine showed me, was hey, learn how to hold your own power. Learn how to stand in it, draw better boundaries, and really grasp on to that flow that it can have, and not let go of something that you work for and that you want just because of external circumstances.
That's powerful. And you mentioned about responsibility there. I think that's so important, to be responsible, that we are the creators of our reality, and whatever we experience, positive or otherwise, we had some part in creating that and co-creating that. Even if it's like a flat tire, we get to ask, what was I doing or being, how was I being so that I attracted this into my life? And for me, I love to take the perspective of what's the gift in this. If there's a difficult or challenging situation, what is the gift? What can I learn from this? How can I come from my highest self with love, with grace, with compassion for whatever's going on? I think for a lot of people out there, they're going through financial challenges. How can you have compassion and grace and love for yourself, even though that stuff is going on, and trust that you're enough as you are, that money is not an indicator of your worth. It's just an indicator of your vibration. What's the energy that you're putting out into the world? Who are you being so that it's attracting those situations and circumstances?
Yeah, that's really great, because I believe there's a lot of people going through that right now, and they really need to hear that message. And so I'm going to take a step back and share something. I know at the end of their lives, we always hear that it's not what you did that you regret, but it's what you didn't do that you regret. Here's the same for me, mistakes. It's not what you did that often is happening and those situations happening. It's what you didn't take the time to prepare for and what overlooked. It's what you did do that often ends up coming up. And so it's cultivating that sense of awareness of, where you're at with everything that you're doing. For instance, in the mundane, making a checklist on stuff and making sure that those things are inspected and looked after and just taken care of. That can mitigate so much. It can mitigate, being really tired or exhausted. It can mitigate being, in an altered state even. So long as you follow that, you'll be good, kind of thing. So, creating those systems for yourself is a big one. In the external world. In the internal world, it's also understanding that everything got you to this point was preparing you to deal with it. It was giving you the skills. It was giving you the opportunities to step up into that responsibility to handle it.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're in a place in your life where everything seems to be on repeat and you keep revisiting similar places in your life and similar situations, it's the universe telling you, hey, man, you haven't been stepping up. Like, we're giving you this lesson until you figure it out and step up into it.
Dude, that's powerful. What greatness do you feel that your challenges were preparing you for?
Oh, man. I honestly feel like they're preparing me to lead a tribe. They're preparing me to lead a group of people and help be that bridge to open a lot of hearts, to get people out of their heads and into their hearts, and however that looks. And so, that's something that I'm going through right now with my own job as well, too. So, full disclosure to the audience, I'm a sales manager as well for a Canadian home services company.
That's awesome. And
I had worked at jobs like this before in my life, and I never really understood why I kept coming back to these places. I was like, what is going on here? Like, why is it the universe, in a way, even if I'm trying to avoid it, will somehow shift and put me like right back in almost the identical job in order for me to do something? And so, can I go into a bit of an example here as well too? Great. So last week, I remember I was communicating like, man, I really dislike my job. Like, I'm not really in a good place with it right now. Like, this is terrible. Like, I wish I could be elsewhere. And then it kind of hit me, and I realized why. It's not because I actually like dislike the job or anything. Actually, I feel like the company and the people that work in it have the potential to be absolutely terrific. And it's been that way before, but we've been going through like a bit of a tense time. The sales were not coming through the way that they needed to be. The owner himself was putting money out of his own pocket to pay our payroll. And so like there was a lot of closed door meetings going on. There was a lot of tension, a lot of lack of communication. There wasn't a lot from like the top down. It was just kind of like, they'd show up, walk in, like set a target or expectation, make a demand, and walk out and shut the door. And like everyone was starting to panic a little bit, and they were like, what is going on? And it was creating this like atmosphere of dread a little bit in the workplace. And that's what I was starting to pick up on. But then I realized I had a golden opportunity here. And I think this is exactly what was trying to be shown to me before, and what was getting me prepared for this. All my previous experiences was, hey, this is a great opportunity to step up as the leader that you are. And so that's, what plant medicine showed me is like, hey man, you're really truly a leader of people. You're really truly a leader of man. Like, you need to hold that power and do it. And so I had gotten on the phone with one of the owners, and there's two of them. One that I get along really well with, in the sense that we have like a previous history. We've worked together before in the past, and we really talk the same way. Like, we really get each other. And so I called him, and I was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about some of the things I'm concerned about. I'm noticing these kind of behaviors, like from, say, you and the other owner, and I'm noticing these behaviors in the staff and how they're responding to it. Like, I don't know if you're open to it, but I feel like if you guys take a moment to really be vulnerable with the rest of the staff, and let them know and let them know what's going on, and like really like step into that like a vulnerability that they on our case. This is why we come at them from like more inclusive perspective. So I had made that phone. We had to really like, hey, like, you kind of push. It's because we believe that there is better, and that you can guys totally hit this. It's like that old saying, like aim for the stars and maybe at least you'll land on the moon, right?
Yep.
And then later that day, after that phone call, I show up and I start, leading the meeting and communicating, like what the team has been doing right, where they could be improving. And then one of the owners was there as well too, and he took control of the meeting as well and really stepped up and shared a big thing that was happening in his own personal life, let alone the fact that he was, paying out of his pocket for payroll and stuff. That was really kind of causing a lot of, the tension in the atmosphere. And the team really connected with that. And they really, really bought in. And that day we had one of our best days yet, when we went out into the field. And it was incredible that vulnerability shown from the ownership as well, coupled with just really focusing on what was going strong, had really helped all of the employees to buy in and reinvest in the message and the vision again, and then go out there and crush it and really tap into their potential and have real world results in a day. And I honestly feel like if I hadn't stepped up like that and hadn't gotten on the phone call, and then if I just bought into that atmosphere of dread and just kind of became a victim to it, we'd still be there and it would be worse off. And so that's why I feel like those kind of opportunities, when they show up in our lives, when those circumstances feel like they're against us, that's a great opportunity to really step into your own leadership and that awareness you've cultivated in past experience, especially if you feel like you've been there before, is going to help you to authentically connect and be vulnerable to the people you need to be vulnerable with, so they can buy back into you and your message.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. And I really hear stepping into the leadership of, if you see that there's a need, if you see that people are suffering, if you see that people can change something, if people are tolerating, if people are complaining and kind of being toxic around a certain topic, how can you step up? How can you invite people into a solution? How can you invite people to change something about it, instead of just saying, this sucks, and keep complaining and adding momentum to it, or keeping it the status quo? How can you actually introduce a new opportunity, a new possibility? And it sounds like, Peter, you've just powerfully done that and stepped up and did what you could and just shared your perspective on what's not working and a possible solution to adjust the reality.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And that was something that was I'm living in right now. That was very, very recent. So it felt really good to kind of really learn that lesson and apply it. And so even though it's been about a year since I've left for that spiritual journey, and about 8 months that I've come home, that integration and living those lessons is still happening. Totally. It's really solidifying right now. So
dude, that's amazing. So we talked a little bit about authenticity in leadership. What else do you feel is important, in being a leader? What else can our audience really take away? How are you effectively leading your team and making sure that they're producing and showing up as their greatest possible selves?
I believe that as a leader, especially, you need to cultivate a sense of radical acceptance, and so taking everything the way it is, just as it is. And instead of focusing on, maybe if we could be in this situation, we could then take action, or what. No, none of that. Just go right into, this is what's going on, and this is what we need to do about it. Or, hey, does anyone have any ideas? Never mind about how it could be, or if we just did this thing to get it to take action. No, none of these weird in between 45-degree angle steps. None of that. It's just as it is, and acceptance of where your employees are at too. Some of them may be dealing with their own personal lives. I guarantee you, every single one of them are going to be dealing with something in their own personal lives that's going to be holding them back from really connecting here. And so having that acceptance for the way they're showing up as well too, and connecting with that, and just being able to work with what you've got is critical. And I think a lot of people in leadership positions aren't necessarily willing to do that. And they might be well, you know what, if a production team would have put this out faster, they would have been able to see the genius behind my designs or whatever. What? That's not how that works. You get anywhere aside from a rule of people pointing fingers at each other and a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
I feel like that answers part of the question. Can you give it to me one more time so I can explore that further?
Yeah, definitely. To be an effective leader, what else would you really recommend that causes you to connect and lead effectively, especially with your team? You mentioned radical acceptance, authenticity. What also are some important qualities of being a leader?
Hmm. I'm tempted to go to use the example of the 10 tenets of Burning Man.
Yeah.
And that is like, if anyone ever looks at those 10 principles, those are actually 10 tenets and principles that I think everybody should adopt in their lives that is going to lead to having an amazing life or an amazing organization or an amazing relationship.
Mm.
Like they really nailed it with those things. And one of the biggest ones that's speaking to me right now is radical inclusion as well too.
Mm.
Like nobody's a stranger, no idea is weird, no solution is off, and no possibility is off the books. You know what I mean? Like or overruled. So really being humble enough to listen to any voice and encourage that leader within everybody to speak up and ideas to come out and then running with it, as opposed to being like, no, it's all about me. This is my credit. This is my show. I'm not going to do that thing. Well, no, that's how your organization becomes a very short-lived organization, to be honest.
Yeah.
It becomes very rigid and inflexible.
Mm.
That humility, that knowing that I don't have all the ideas, not even close, but together, someone has it.
Yeah.
And we will work.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. What would you say is your approach to connecting with people who are leaders, who are influential? How do you approach the situation? How do you think about yourself? How do you think about them to connect up, so to speak, to attract opportunities so that you can be led, so that you can be taught and mentored by people who you respect and admire?
That's a really great question. I struggled with this one for a long time when I was younger because I always thought to myself, I'm like, well, what do I have that they don't have already? I'm looking for this mentorship. Like they've got everything. They're winning the game. They got everything I want. What the heck else could I give these people? But it's finding what they love and finding what they're interested in and what they're for, and then finding things outside of that that are going to help them achieve their mission that they're already on even greater. So for instance, if I wanted to get like Gary Vaynerchuk's attention or something, I would go find like a social media app or something that is maybe a little bit underground or like that's being used by like the 17 and 18-year-olds right now that like maybe you and I are unaware of. And then be like, hey, by the way, have you heard of this? Blah, blah, blah. Like you can do this, that, and the other thing with this platform. Like it's starting to gain this many users. Like let's work together on this. Or like, hey, check this out. Just give it away. Like give away some value that way. Yeah.
That's good. So find out what their agendas are, what they want to create, their projects, their missions, their promotional seasons that they're in, so to speak. Like what are they out to accomplish, and then empower them to do that and be a giver first and serve first and then get their attention like that.
100%. 100%. You only get what you give. And if you're expecting to get first without having given nothing, guess what you're going to get? Nothing!
I love it. So
exactly.
I'm curious, your company is called Futureproof Designs. Why is the future important to you? Why is that word in there in your company name?
Because the future is just full of possibilities. It's not written yet. And creative design is all about the possibilities of, what it is that your brand or your company can stand for. And before you have a designer actually ink it, well, I guess nowadays, put it on Illustrator, make it digital, but let's just go with ink it and make it real and make it tangible. It's just accessibility. Your brand can be anything. It could go anywhere. It can do whatever it wants. And so there's so many different streams that it can go down. And also, the future is the only thing we're heading towards. It's never truly here, but we're always marching forward towards it. And so it's important to be mindful of having your eyes going through the windshield and maybe not necessarily focused on the rear view mirror. And I really picked the name Futureproof. And also we hear that phrase a lot sometimes, like, like this is like a future-proof way to, make it through any recession or any economy or any bad. Like if you have these tactics, like you'll future-proof your business. Like there's a real sense of like reliability and strength and stability. I'm really attracted to that. And so that's why I was like, hey, I think there's a really great opportunity for a cool brand name here.
Oh, that's awesome, man. What do you do today, these days, to really make sure that you're staying in alignment with who you are and listening to who you are and showing up aligned?
That's a multifaceted question, but the biggest thing is that I start with the basic health. Eat good, clean, healthy food. Deal with it because it makes all the difference. Like the really sugary, seasoned, kind of like fried stuff that causes a lot of inflammation in the body, causes a lot of inflammation in the brain, and things aren't firing right. You feel that like fogginess. Like if any of your viewers ever felt that like afternoon 2 p.m. brain fog, well, maybe look back at what you ate for lunch. Like that's probably going to give you some clues as to why you're feeling that way. Because eating the right healthy foods and moving your body, your brain's not going to feel foggy whatsoever. So, or it shouldn't anyway. If you're feeling foggy, maybe you're putting something else in your body. You're not getting enough sleep, or something else is going on. So.
Yeah, that's good, man. I love it. It's like what we put in. It's our fuel. It's our fuel source to make sure that we're operating at the maximum efficiency and potency. So I really love that. So Peter, if we could wrap up this interview with the biggest takeaway you want our audience to have, what is that, man?
Oh, okay. What the biggest takeaway is, oftentimes when we do things, we assume that it has to be, in order to go deep, in order to really see what it is we're trying to see, it has to be difficult. It has to be hard and challenging. And I want you guys to know that is not the case. That's not actually how the universe works. In fact, it is always showing you things in plain sight. Everything, like the songs you're listening to that come on the radio at opportune times, from the people and conversations you have, the jobs that you're working, the situations that keep repeating, it is always showing you right in front of you. It's trying to be as easy as possible for you to decipher so you can see it clearly and take action sooner. And so when it comes to personal development, when it comes to diving deep and discovering more about yourself, let it be easy, my friend. Let it be easy.
That's gold, man. So, Peter, this is awesome, and everyone can connect with you at Futureproof Designs. Again, if you love this interview, take a screenshot, tag Peter at Futureproof Designs, tag me at I Am Millionaire Chris on Instagram, and we would love to hear from you. Peter, what else can our audience do to stay connected with you and continue their journey, man?
Yeah, so they can stay connected with me by adding me on Facebook. You can just look me up at Peter Rychlik. Feel free to send me a friend request. Message me anytime. They can stay connected with me via email. I'm totally down with sending personal emails, old school that way, just Rychlik at ualberta.ca. And my Instagram as well, too, at Futureproof Designs. And there's going to be some more things coming when it comes to online presence as well, too, and more ways that they can connect further. But for now, it's going to be a nice personal touch, so feel free to reach out, like my stuff, share, do whatever you want. I really, really appreciate you guys tuning on in. Thank you so very much, Chris, for having me on here and having me a part of your show. It is absolutely beautiful what you're doing, that you're really putting this out there, putting people on who can help people inspire their message, because every single one of us has a great message and a unique story, and they deserve to be shared. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. I love you, brother. Keep shining, and we'll talk to you soon. Have the best day ever, man.
Love you too, brother. You as well. Cheers.